You're listening to the Touch 'em Up podcast. I'm your host, Double M, and on today's episode, we have UFC Fight Night, or UFC London, Aspinall versus Tybura in the UFC's heavyweight division, with the return of London's own Tom Aspinall coming back after that injury he suffered in his UFC main event against Curtis Blades. He's coming back with a record of 12 victories and 3 defeats, going up against Marcin Tybura, a UFC veteran, a UFC heavyweight veteran with a heavy grappling game and decent striking on the feet, coming back with a record of 24 victories and 7 defeats. Will Aspinall come back in his hometown and be able to secure a victory, or will Marcin Tybura spoil the party of one of the UFC's heavyweight division's brightest prospects and up-and-comers? Let's get this started and step into the ring. All right, I know that wasn't the best intro, so forgive me, but we're going to be coming in here breaking down the card for UFC London, which takes place this Saturday from the O2 Arena in the United Kingdom in London, England. Obviously, the main event in the heavyweight division between Tom Aspinall and Marcin Tybura. We're not going to break every fight down on the card, but we're going to break down the majority of them. We're going to skip the Bruna Brazil and Shauna Bannon fight. We're also going to be skipping Ketlin Vieira versus Pani Kianzad. And then the Jamal Pogues and Mick Parkin fight. But other than that, we're going to be breaking down everything on this UFC London card. Not that I don't think those fights deserve to be broken down, but it's a 15-fight card. And I'd like to take a little bit of extra time to dive into some of the matchups than others. And I don't think that people are sitting here waiting for breakdowns on the fights that I just mentioned. Not to say that they're not going to be good fights, but I feel like covering the other fights and targeting those are better from not only a podcast perspective and in terms of runtime on the show, but also in terms of, more entertainment value. I feel like it's better to look at the other fights. Last week, I know we only broke down the main card, but the overall picks for the fight night, we did pretty good. 10 victories, 3 losses, went 10-3 out of the 13 fight card. I thought we were going to go 11-2 because I did pick Tyson Nam to defeat the up-and-comer. I forgot his name. I can't think of his name, but I picked Tyson Nam in that fight. He was a pretty big underdog. He lost the fight by split decision, but I feel like he should have got the nod there. So technically could have gone 11-2, and then we picked Estela Nunes, and her arm got snapped in half like a freaking freeze pop in the freezer, man. It was bad. I mean, the minute she went to post off that awkward takedown, snapped the arm right in half. I mean, clean break, and it's going to be a while before we see Estela Nunes. I wish her nothing but the best in her recovery, but, it is what it is. We had Mayra Bueno Silva by sub. We had Francisco Prado by knockout. We had Nazim Sadikov by TKO in round 2. He did get it done in round 2, but it was a submission. But from the betting side, I did not do well, and that's my fault, man. I chased too many parlays, and I feel like just playing simple singular bets, even if it's bigger odds or lesser odds, that's the smarter idea. And then you can take some of those round props and winning method props as you continue to go down the card. But the parlays, I mean, I think keeping it to 2 fights, and I know a lot of the most successful gamblers in MMA do that. So that's definitely something I have to take into consideration, is betting only 2-leg parlays. And that's what we're going to start with UFC London. But we're going to kick it off with the first fight in the flyweight division between Jafel Filo and Daniel Barez. Now, I didn't know much about Daniel Barez going into this fight. I knew who Jafel Filo was. I bet him against Muhammad Mokaev, not because I thought he was going to win, but because I thought he had the opportunity to defeat a guy like Mokaev, especially since Mokaev was coming in off of an injury. The striking pretty much went to Mokaev for the majority of it. However, Filo did lock Mokaev in that knee bar, and I mean, he should have tapped, and Filo should have got the win there, but he was able to survive, even though he got his knee ripped and torn apart, and that's why he's been gone for so long, but got his knee ripped apart at UFC 286, but then was able to find a way to take the back of Filo and lock up that rear naked choke and get the win. So props to Mokaev, but Filo's good, man. He's decent on the feet. He uses a lot of low kicks and jabs. He's got a good left hook that he caught his opponent on the Contender Series with. He lunged in, bang, boom, caught him with the left hook, dropped him, got him out of there. He's very good at mixing up his combinations, throwing multi-shot combos, but He likes to keep it between 2 and 3 shots and usually will punctuate with an inside or outside low kick to the lead leg of his opponent. He's very heavy with the kicks. He has a very solid jiu-jitsu game, a really good grappling game, but against the guy in Barez, I kind of see this fight playing out on the feet. Now, if you guys don't know who Daniel Barez is, I didn't know either. He fights out of Spain. He's a mixed martial arts veteran. Let me see if it says 0-1 in the UFC, but his overall record, I think, is pretty good. I don't know the record number off the top of my head, but we will look that up right now. He's 16-5. Here we go. 16-5 as a professional MMA fighter. His nickname, it doesn't look like he has a nickname. Yeah, no nickname, 16-5. He's on a win streak of 4 wins coming into this UFC debut, and he's got 13 victories coming by way of finish and only 3 via decision. Jafel Filo and Daniel Barez, in my opinion, are going to be looking to strike it out on the feet. Barez is a very technical striker. He kind of relies on pressure fighting, pushing forward, chopping those low kicks, coming back with hooks. He's got good uppercuts into lead hooks that he hurt one of his opponents with and knocked them out. But he kind of walks forward with a high guard and looks to chop your legs, look to rip to the body. He's got a very good left hook to the body, and you're going to see him try to attack the body against a guy like Filo if he's able to close down that distance and range, chop him with his own low kicks, and then be able to get into that boxing or clinch range to be able to work the body shots. I feel like on the feet, the advantage would go to Daniel Barez. I think that he is the much more technical striker. I feel like he has more variety. And the most important thing I think in this fight is that the activity of Daniel Barez is a lot higher than Filo. Now, Filo is pretty active in his own right, but again, it's not multi-shot combinations. Sometimes he kind of waits for the shots to come to him. He'll chop the low kick, chop the left hook, 1-2 left hook, right low kick, some front kicks up the middle. He'll throw his combinations, and it's not like he just stands there and is kind of a stagnant fighter. But I feel like the guy who's going to be pushing forward, the guy who's going to be looking for a finish, is going to be Daniel Barez. Like I said, 13 out of 16 victories come by way of finish. He likes to walk you down. He likes to get in your face. He kind of reminds me of a shoot-the box fighter. He is an older fighter in the UFC, so that is something you have to take into consideration. But he likes to walk forward, put you on the pressure, get you on the back foot, work those body shots, work combinations, work the body work up top to the head, punctuate with a low kick, bang, 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 body shot, right low kick, 1-2, measure off, uppercut, hook inside the clinch range. He's going to be looking to put the bombs on your moms, and that's kind of what I, equate Daniel Barez to. I know that people are going to side with Filo in this fight because of his jiu-jitsu, because of his submission acumen, because of the more UFC experience, the win on the Contender Series. And I understand, you always have to take experience into consideration. Filo won on the Contender Series by knockout, and Daniel Barez actually lost on the Contender Series via split decision to Carlos Hernandez. And you just saw Carlos Hernandez get that TKO victory in his last fight against, if it is the same Carlos Hernandez I'm thinking of, let me see. Yes, he got that TKO victory over Dennis Bondar, but then the fight was stopped due to the headbutt on the way down, which they believe knocked him out. But they went to the scorecards, and it was a technical decision for Carlos Hernandez against Dennis Bondar. Prior to that, he lost via rear naked choke to Alan Nascimento. But Carlos Hernandez isn't a guy that you have to be, upset with that loss. You can't look at that loss and be like, man, Carlos Hernandez isn't that good of a fighter. Carlos Hernandez in his own right is 9-2 as a professional mixed martial artist. And I think that this fight is going to be very close. If you look at the height, it's 5'7" for Filo, 5'6" for Barez, and a 2.5-inch reach advantage for Filo. And that's kind of where Filo is going to want to keep this fight. He's going to want to keep it just outside of kicking range and keep Barez at the end of his jab and be able to chop with those low kicks, land the good counter left hook, the check hook when Barez tries to close the distance. I think the grappling of both fighters is very solid, but I kind of think the grappling gonna cancel out from each other. I think Filo would have more success if he goes to his wrestling, his grappling, and his submissions. But at the same time, I think the forward pressure, the activity on the feet, the combinations, and the technical striking of Barez is going to give Jafel Filo a lot of trouble. And although Filo is technical in his own right and he is dangerous on the feet, I think if this plays out as a striking matchup and the grappling cancels out from both fighters because they are both well-rounded grapplers, I think that Filo is going to get hit on the feet a lot. I think Filo's going to get hurt. I think he's going to get pieced up, get chopped with those low kicks. But I think a lot of the work from Perez is going to be inside the clinch, inside the 50-50, in that boxing range when he's going to be able to land that left hook to the body, the right uppercut, the left hook up top, the 1-2, left hook to the body, left hook to the head, right uppercut, 1-2, pull 2-3, uppercut, left hook to the body, punctuate with a low kick, jab, left hook, right low kick, 1-2, step off, right low kick, hook, cross. He's going to be mixing up those combinations, and I really do favor the finishing instinct and the activity of a guy like Daniel Barrez, even though the more UFC experience goes to the side of Jafel Filo. But in my opinion, I'm going to side with Daniel Barrez in this fight to get the victory. I think he's going to win via a late TKO. I think early it's going to be competitive, but I think the pressure, the forward pressure of Barrez, the combinations, the body shots, the low kicks, I think all of that is just going to slow down Filo. I think he's going to shoot some takedowns. I don't think he's going to have the most success on the with his wrestling and jiu-jitsu. And if the grappling is stifled out, like I believe it will be, then I do give the advantage to Barrez. I think that he's more well-rounded. I think he's a more technical fighter on the feet. And I do think that he can land some big shots and hurt Filo. Beautiful uppercuts, beautiful hooks, great low kicks, uses his jab well, uses the measurement of distance, and gets inside on his opponents and lands big, heavy shots. And I think that's really where the difference is going to be made in this fight. And I'm going to go with Daniel Barrez. I believe he's in this fight or comes into this fight as an underdog. We're going to pull that up real quick. Plus 105. So I'm going to go with the plus 105 underdog in Daniel Barrez to defeat Jafel Filo via a late second round TKO. I just think the pressure, the volume, the low kicks, I think he's going to slow down Filo. I think Filo could definitely catch him coming in with a good left hook, hurt him with some low kicks. He has good boxing in his own right. And like I said, if Filo does resort to the wrestling and the jiu-jitsu, I think he could have more success, but I think it's going to be hard for Filo to close that distance and get that wrestling off. So I'm going to go with Daniel Barrez in his UFC debut as the plus 105 underdog to defeat Jafel Filo via late second round TKO. All right, up next, we're going to move to the lightweight division in a fight between Chris Duncan and Yanal Ashmouz. I see a lot of people moving on to the Chris Duncan side the longer this fight has been, or the closer we've been getting to this fight. And I think that that's the right move, man. I think Yanal Ashmouz is a great fighter. He has really good wrestling, really solid top control, good ground and pound. And I think that, yes, if he gets in on the hips of Duncan and takes him down, I think that he can use some great ground and pound. I think he can control the feet, pass the side control, controlling the half guard and win the moments on top, landing his ground and pound, looking for submissions, and mainly just accruing top control. But you have to look at Chris Duncan. A lot of people were counting him out as the underdog against Omar Morales. And I was a guy who backed Chris Duncan in that fight because I expected him to be the more technical striker. I expected him to have the better and sharper boxing, even though he was going to be at a speed disadvantage. But what we saw in the fight with Chris Duncan and Omar Morales was his ability to use the wrestling if the striking wasn't going his way. Chris Duncan is durable. He has a lot of tenacity. He's a very determined fighter, and he's always coming to win. You're never going to see a moment in his fights where Chris Duncan is going to quit on himself. And I think that's something you have to take into consideration in this fight against Yanal. I know Yanal 7-0. Chris Duncan 10-1 as a pro MMA fighter, but I think Chris Duncan's tenacity and his ability to continue to push forward, even if the fight isn't going his way, he might drop the first round to Ashmouz. Maybe Ashmouz lands a big left hook, a big overhand right, a big uppercut, and is able to hurt Duncan, because we've seen Duncan, he is a durable fighter, but at the same time, his durability gets checked in a lot of his fights because he gets hit on the chin. He gets hurt in mostly all of his fights, but he finds a way to come back. And even if you hurt him, he can come back with that beautiful right hand. And I think that's something that you have to look at with this fight with Duncan and Ashmouz. Who has the better tenacity to stick in a fight if it's not going their way? In my opinion, I think it's Chris Duncan. I think he has the better cardio. I think he has the better ability to push a pace throughout the 15-minute bout. Now, who's the more aggressive fighter? That's going to be Yanal. Who probably has better chain wrestling? That's going to be Yanal. Who has better top control? I would say it's Yanal Ashmouz. But looking at Chris Duncan, you also have to look at the fact that he's working out at American Top Team, and he's training alongside Grant Dawson. And I believe he was training with Grant Dawson in his last camp going into the fight with Omar Morales. And in that fight, you saw Duncan use his wrestling, use his control, control from the referee's position on the mat, be able to leg lace the opponent, breaking down his base, getting the one hook in to control Omar up against the fence, being able to use that triangle leg mount and control the opponent up against the cage. I think it's going to be harder to do that against a guy in Yanal than it was against Morales, because Morales isn't really known as a grappler or a grapple-heavy fighter or a man who uses a lot of jiu-jitsu, I guess you could say, or a fighter who uses a lot of jiu-jitsu and grappling in a lot of his fights. But I think Chris Duncan can use that wrestling, and even if he doesn't, I know that Yanal probably has more power. I would say he's more dangerous on the feet, but the more technical striker and the fighter with more weapons in this fight, I think it goes to the problem. I think it's Chris Duncan. I think he has more technical boxing. I think he has a better ability to use his jab and measure the opponent and be able to catch him on counters when he tries to close that range. Ashmus has good left hooks, good right hooks, a good straight punch right down the middle, good straight shots, good hooks, but he kind of overcommits on a lot of his shots with big left hooks, big uppercuts. And I know he caught that kick from Sam Patterson, dropped him with the shot, and then finished him on the ground. But that's a fighter who, in my opinion, was kind of a can. I don't really rate that win too high with Omar Morales, even though he has kind of gone, win, loss in the UFC and hasn't had the most success. He's still a very solid fighter, and he's got very good technical striking, and he's a very well-rounded guy, especially if he's able to keep the fight on the feet. So in that case, I think Chris Duncan has the more impressive wins when it comes to his UFC career and what we've seen him be able to do inside that octagon. I think he's more measured on the feet. He uses his low kicks a little bit more. I think Ashmus is more, or Yanal Ashmus is more using the boxing heavy approach. And although Duncan is, in my opinion, a sharper, more technical boxer than Yanal, I think he uses his kicks more. He uses his footwork. He uses the measurements, the feints, and the fakes to set up his shots to be able to land that piston of a right hand. Even on the Contender Series, he got caught with a big shot from his opponent in I can't think of his name, the guy who caught him on the Contender Series, but he got hurt, got hit with some big uppercuts, almost got knocked out, switched southpaw, bangs through that straight left hand as the opponent was trying to close in and finish him and knocked him out. So even if you hurt a guy like Duncan, you have to be careful with how you close the distance, because he can come back with that big right hand, come back with a big straight left, come back with a huge shot if your defense isn't on point, hurt you and get you out of there. Now, early on when this fight opened up, I believe Yanal Ashmus was the favorite. And if not, it was basically kind of a pick'em style of fight where like plus 110, plus 115, minus 120. But now you look at the odds, it's got minus 150 on the problem in Chris Duncan to plus 130 for Yanal Ashmus. I think that the respect is coming in on Duncan, and I think people are seeing that he is the more well-rounded fighter in this matchup, even though the finishing upside and the danger upside is more on Yanal Ashmus. I think the more technical fighter, the fighter that's going to have more tenacity to push through those 15 minutes, and the fighter that's going to fight for your money. You hear a lot of people talking about fighters fighting for your money. I think you get a guy like Chris Duncan, he's going to fight for your money every time. And even when you think he's out of there, he got hurt with a multi-shot combination from Omar Morales, and then Omar Morales got hit with a big right hand from Chris Duncan, and he backed him up, he put his hands out like, come on, is that all you got? And I like the tenacity, I like the ability of Chris Duncan to stay in the fight and stay composed even if he gets hurt. I like his use of fakes and feints. I like his ability to push through 15 minutes, and I think he has much better cardio and the ability to push the pace than Yanal Ashmus. So in my opinion, I'm going to side with the favorite in Chris Duncan. I'm going to go with the problem, Chris Duncan, to defeat Yanal Ashmus, handing him his first loss in his professional MMA career. And I'm going to go with a decision win, but I could also see a late TKO. But I'm going to go with Chris Duncan to defeat Yanal Ashmus via 29-28 unanimous decision. I think he's going to be able to push that pace. I think he could, like I said, get a late TKO because his boxing, his combinations are very solid. He uses the low kicks very well, inside and outside, the fakes and feints. He's a very measured and cerebral fighter, and even if he gets hurt, he still stays in the fight, and I think that's very important against a guy who's kind of a cannon in Yanal Ashmus, who's going to be pushing that pace, looking to knock you out from the beginning of the bell until the end of the fight. So give me the problem. Give me Chris Duncan to defeat Yanal Ashmus via 29-28 unanimous decision. All right, and now we move to the next fight up on the main card that we're going to break down. It's in the UFC's middleweight division between a Team Mayweather signed MMA fighter in Mahmoud Muradov going up against a guy who's formerly in the UFC's welterweight division, has a big knockout victory over ruthless Robbie Lawler, but then went and lost via submission to Rafael Dos Anjos, former lightweight champion and welterweight title challenger, in Brian Bam Bam Barberina, moving up to the UFC's middleweight division after being a welterweight. Look, I think that this fight is pretty cut and dry. Mahmoud Muradov is going to have the more technical striking on the feet. And I think overall, the more well rounded fighter in mixed martial arts is Mahmoud Muradov. But at the same time, Brian Barberina, he switches his stance a lot. He throws multi punch and kick combinations. He gets in your face. He pushes the pace. And he's a fighter who's going to back you up. You might hit him with some big shots. You might hurt him, but he's going to get in your face. He's going to back you up, and he has a lot of power to hurt you and knock you out. But at the same time, he is going up to 185. So do you think the power of Brian Barberina is going to carry over to 185? I don't necessarily love the move to 185 because Brian Barberina wasn't a big 170-er. He wasn't a big welterweight. He's not that big of a guy. He's kind of a softer welterweight. He doesn't have a ton of muscle. He's not a huge built muscular guy, but he's also not super fat or super heavy to where that move, made sense because he was having trouble making weight. I think he moved up because he thought that there was a lot more grappling upside in the welterweight division with the top guys in the division, like a Colby Covington, like a RDA, like a Kamaru Usman, and he kind of wanted to get away from the grapplers, and I think that's why he moved up to 185. I think Mahmoud Muradov is going to be the faster fighter. He's going to be the more technical fighter. He's going to be the much more technical boxer. He's going to have more upside on the feet with landing bigger shots. But at the same time, if you look at Mahmoud Muradov's fight against Gerald Meerschaert, that was a fight where he was hurting Meerschaert every time he landed on his chin. Overhand rights, left hooks, jab, left hook, right hand. 1-2 down the middle. Overhand right, big looping left hook. He was hurting him. He was hurting him bad, but he couldn't get him out of there. And the longer that Meerschaert stayed in the fight, the more that Meerschaert was pushing Mahmoud Muradov back, landing some good counters, landing that straight left over and over, landing the 1-2, landing the big left hand right down the middle, the more you're able to push back a guy like Muradov, the more you can hurt him, the more you can back him up, the more he kind of gets in his own way. He likes to be the bully, but if you start to bully a guy like Muradov, I think he starts to break mentally a little bit. And the one thing about Brian Barberina that I do like for him, at least in the case of this fight, is that he's not going to break mentally. You might be beating his ass. You might be beating him up really bad, but he's still going to be in there looking to throw back, looking to throw combinations in your face, looking to throw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 punch combinations, looking to land right on your chin. But again, at the same time, I don't love the middleweight move for Brian Barberina because I feel like he's not really built for the middleweight division. But this fight, although Muradov has almost all the advantages, I kind of give the cardio advantage to Brian Barberina. I give the technical boxing advantage, the cardio advantage, the grappling advantage, all to Muradov. And I think if Muradov is smart here, he's going to use his grappling more than he's going to use his striking. I think if he uses his weight advantage, using his muscle, his strength to take down Barberina, control from the top, land some ground and pound, and potentially lock up a submission, I think the grappling upside in this fight is pretty heavy for Muradov. But this is also a fight where I think it's going to play out, a majority of the fight at least is going to play out on the feet. I think it's going to be a lot of striking and not so much wrestling. And in that case, you have to think like, okay, if that's how it's going to go, do you want to side with a guy who is more technical, sharper, has bigger power, and can get the knockout, but potentially could break down the stretch? Or do you want to side with the guy in Barberina where even though he might be at a technical disadvantage, even though he might be at a power disadvantage, he's going to be throwing more volume, he's going to be getting in the face of the opponent, and although he's not a natural middleweight and he's more a welterweight, do you want to side with the guy who's going to be pushing the pace for the entire time the fight goes down until he gets a finish, he gets finished, or the bell ends? If you look at it like that, you probably would want to side with the underdog in Brian Barberina because he's going to be fighting for your money more than a potential Mahmoud Muradov. But at the same time, I think Muradov has so many advantages, and based off the fact that this is Barberina moving up in weight and not cutting weight, maybe he has a hard time making 70, but he's not that big of a guy. I think that this fight, I don't think this move to middleweight is a good one for Barberina. He's probably going to be at a speed advantage, but the thing is, in this fight, he's not going to be at a speed advantage against Muradov. Muradov is going to have the faster boxing. He's going to have the better left hooks, the better 1-2s, the better overhands, the better check left hooks, the better lateral movement. I think all those side with Muradov. And the thing I think you really have to take into consideration is although we don't see it very often, he did have some success grappling with Caio Borralho in certain positions and was able to reverse him at least one point in the fight. And I think if he uses his wrestling and grappling in this fight and mixes it up with the more technical boxing, the harder shots on the feet, he can slow down Barberena and potentially get a submission or a ground and pound TKO. But I am going to side with the huge favorite in Mahmoud Muradov, considering he was like a minus 210, minus 220. Now he's all the way up to a minus 325. I don't like those odds at all. At that point, I would kind of play the under 2.5 rounds at an even money minus 110, but I'm not too happy about the overs and unders lately, especially with how MMA's been going, where you think a fight's not going to go to decision and it somehow goes the distance. So I wouldn't advocate playing overs and unders unless you're going like over 1.5 rounds. I think that's a safe bet for a majority of fights. But I am going to side with Mahmoud Muradov. I just feel like he has more weapons. I feel like he's the more powerful striker on the feet, the more technical striker. I feel like he sets up his shots better, and I think he can use his wrestling and grappling to put Barberena in a place where we've seen him struggle before. So I'm going to take Mahmoud Muradov to defeat Bryan Barberena. I'm going to go with a second round ground and pound TKO, but I could also see him catching Barberena on the feet and knocking him out. But I don't love the bet because I could see Muradov getting tired and getting, drowned under the volume, the power punching, and the combinations that Barberena is going to come at you from minute 1 to minute 15. So I don't love this fight from a betting perspective. I would say stay away from it when it comes to a bet, but I do side with the minus 325 favorite in Mahmoud Muradov to just be the more technical and well-rounded fighter and then get him out of there with a second round ground and pound TKO. All right, up next, we move to a battle in the lightweight division because we are going to be skipping the Mick Parkin and Jamal Pogues fight, but we're going to be moving to a battle in the lightweight division with Mark Diakiese going up against Yoel Alvarez. This is a really interesting matchup. I think that Mark Diakiese is a fighter who came into the UFC, got a big knockout, got a few big wins, and people thought that, the UFC was really going to push him, and they had the next British star in their hands with Mark Diakiese. However, he's kind of fallen off in recent fights, and he lost that fight to Michael Johnson, and I think that was a fight he could have won, but he relied more on using his wrestling and kind of just being inactive while Michael Johnson was landing the bigger, quicker, cleaner shots throughout the 15-minute period. Michael Johnson was just more active, and that's what won him the fight. Mark Diakiese kind of staring in the mirror for the majority of it, tried to use a lot of his grappling and wrestling to get the fight to where he wanted it to go. And I think Mark Diakiese kind of is a sort of a head case in MMA. You never know what to expect because this guy has the striking technique. This guy has the striking acumen and the weapons to be a very dangerous fighter in this lightweight division. He's fast, he's quick, he's technical. Big knockout power in his punches, technical punches, great kicks, spinning back kicks, roundhouse kicks. I mean, he can put it all together, and we've seen him resort to a more heavy grappling, wrestling, top control style of game as well. So he is including more weapons in his overall mixed martial arts toolbox, which makes him a more well-rounded fighter. But in the fights where you think he's going to just dominate his opponents, he kind of doesn't show up, and he ends up losing the fight based on not enough activity or getting caught in a bad position. But in fights where you expect him to get dominated, sometimes he makes the fights a little bit more competitive than we think he's going to. But going up against a guy in Yoel Alvarez, man, I think this is a very, very, very difficult fight for Mark Diakiese. Bone Crusher is his nickname. I think Yoel Alvarez is really well-rounded on the feet. He uses a very good jab. He's got good elbows when he closes that boxing range off. Lands good elbows over the top like you saw him put away Thiago Moises with, who's one of the top contenders, or at least at a point in time, was one of the top contenders in the lightweight division. And a man who went almost 5 rounds with the champion at lightweight in Islam Makhachev. Yoel Alvarez, yeah, he lost to Arman Tsarukyan in his UFC career, but that's his only loss so far in the UFC. He got out-wrestled, got controlled from the bottom position. Tsarukyan was controlling from the top and landing big elbows, just ground and pounding him into oblivion, hurting him, and really just showed a wrestling and overall top control advantage over Yoel Alvarez. But at the same time, Arman is one of the top fighters in the lightweight division. I think when you look at this fight, one fight you want to look at for Diakiese's career is the fight against Rafael Alves. Rafael Alves was starting off. They were kind of going back and forth. He caught Mark Jacasey with a flying knee and then wrapped up a guillotine choke early in round one and submitted Mark Jacasey. We've seen Jacasey have issues with jiu-jitsu. We've seen him have issues with getting hurt on the feet and resorting to takedowns. If you look at Yoel Alvarez, anytime you're hurt, if you shoot a takedown, Yoel Alvarez is going to jump that neck and wrap that guillotine up so fast and more than likely get you out of there. He's got a guillotine choke finish in 2 of his 3 victories inside the UFC. He was able to lock up a guillotine choke on Joe Duffy, who shot a really bad takedown, but he was getting chopped up with some calf kicks from Yoel Alvarez. He shot a bad takedown. Duffy immediately got caught in that guillotine, got submitted. In another one of Yoel Alvarez's fights, he almost locked him in a guillotine. It was very close, but he was able to get out of it. And then again, he was able to reverse position, find a way back to that neck, lock up the guillotine, and choke him out. The fight with with Arman Sarukian was obviously he didn't have the potential to set up those submissions, wasn't able to set them up. But I wouldn't put Arman Sarukian and Mark Jacasey anywhere near each other in terms of grappling acumen and grappling skill set and technique. But I do think that Yoel Alvarez has the potential to get hit a lot on the feet. He doesn't have the best high guard. He doesn't have the best defense. He also doesn't defend takedowns well, but he uses submission attempts to defend takedown attempts. It's more sub attempts for takedown defense when it comes to Joel Alvarez. But I think he can even outstrike Mark Jacasey on the feet. But Jacasey's going to be more technical. He's probably going to be more dangerous. But the elbows inside the clinch, the knees to the body, the good front kicks, really solid calf kicks from Yoel Alvarez, usage of the jab, circling off 1-2s, left hooks, uppercuts, elbows. He's a dangerous fighter as well. But I think the grappling, the submission upside, and most importantly, that guillotine, I have to side with Joel Alvarez or Yoel Alvarez against Mark Jacasey. I just can't pick a guy like Jacasey because he doesn't really have a skill set that's concrete when you break down fights. He doesn't have a concrete path to victory. And although that does side with him in being a very well-rounded fighter, it's also at the same point, what kind of Mark Jacasey are we going to get? Because when you think he's going to show up, he doesn't. And when you think he's not going to show up, he does. And he does better than people think. So I'm going to go with Joel Alvarez. I'm pretty confident in him getting this done here. He's going to be at a very, let's look at the stats for the length and reach. He's going to have a 77-inch reach to a 73-inch reach for Jacasey. So a 4-inch reach advantage and a 4-inch height advantage as well. He's going to use that range. He's going to use those calf kicks, the front kicks to the body, the 1-2s down the middle, close the range with the elbows. But if Jacasey shoots that takedown, I just see Yoel Alvarez grabbing onto that neck and submitting him. I think it's going to be pretty close to how the Rafael Alves fight played out with Jacasey. I don't know if it's going to be that quick of a finish, but I eventually just see Joel Alvarez catching the neck of Mark Jacasey and submitting him pretty early on in the contest. I'm going to go with Joel Alvarez to defeat Mark Bone Crusher Jacasey via first round guillotine choke. I could see it being in the second round, but I just think Yoel Alvarez's jiu-jitsu is too much for Jacasey, who is a guy that, although we've seen him use his wrestling and top control, has some issues with really solid submission artists, and Yoel Alvarez fits that bill. So give me Joel Alvarez to defeat Mark Jacasey via a first round guillotine choke submission. And a pretty confident pick for me for this week. All right, up next, we move to a fight in the welterweight division between Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts and Johnny Parsons. I'm going to be honest, I didn't watch a ton of tape on this fight, but when you look at it, I think you know what you're going to expect. 18-7 for Danny Roberts, 8-2 for Johnny Parsons. The power, knockout ability, aggressiveness, and overall just more brute strength goes on the side of Johnny Parsons. If he's able to close off that distance, cut down the range, and get in the face of Danny Roberts, he's going to more than likely knock him out. We've seen him get knocked out in a fight, with a body shot and a shot up top by Jack Della Maddalena. We've seen him get hurt in many of his fights. We've seen him come back, look good, and win a lot of his fights as well. But he's a fighter who kind of wins one, loses two, wins two, loses one. He's very hot potato, very hot and cold is Danny Roberts. And he's a very well-rounded fighter. He's very, very good on the feet. He has a little bit of grappling inefficiencies, but in this fight against Johnny Parsons, I think it's going to mainly play out in a striking style of matchup. I don't see a ton of grappling wrestling, jiu-jitsu playing out in this fight, really, to be honest. I don't see it. I think it's going to be a striking matchup, and it's going to be who can control the range and distance that's going to win the fight. If Danny Roberts gets the distance closed off on him, if Johnny Parsons is able to get into that clinch range, get into that boxing range, land the big uppercuts, land the big hooks, land the big overhands, land a big knee, land a big front kick, then I think Johnny Parsons can 100% knock out Danny Roberts. But at the same time, if the fight stays just at kicking range, just at boxing range, or outside of both of those ranges, but where Roberts can step in and land some big shots and get out of the way, then in that case, I would side with Danny Roberts. He's very good at using his 1-2. He changes stances a lot, uses a lot of fakes and feints, uses those front kicks to the body, the low kicks, and he uses his long-range weapons, the 1-2, the overhand right, the big left hooks and right hooks, but he's very technical and cerebral with the way he picks up or uses his striking on the feet. Very good movement, very good footwork, very good fakes and feints like we talked about. And if he's able to keep the fight at the range that he wants to, I think he picks apart Johnny Parsons. But it's really just if Johnny Parsons can close that distance, get in the face of Danny Roberts and make it a dirty fight. If he can make it a dirty, nasty, rough, drag him out fight against Hot Chocolate and Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts, I think he can put out Danny Roberts because we've seen him have durability issues. Even though he's gotten some knockouts and finishes in his UFC career, he also has been finished and has been knocked out, has been chinned a lot of times in his UFC career as well. So I think if Johnny Parsons can close that distance off, close that range, and land a big shot over the top, land a big uppercut inside the clinch, that he can hurt Danny Roberts. I think this is a very close fight, and it's really a fight that I don't want to necessarily make a pick on. But when it comes to an overall pick, it's kind of a coin flip for me, to be honest. But I'm going to side with Danny Roberts one more time. I like Danny Roberts. I'm a fan of his, but he just hasn't done too well lately in the UFC. But I am going to side with Danny Roberts to be able to keep it at the range he wants to, land good body kicks, good low kicks, that 1-2 down the middle, stick the jab in the face of Johnny Parsons, and not allow him to crash the pocket, close the distance, and land some big shots on his chin with uppercuts, hooks, overhands, and anything that he can land that's like one-hitter quitter knockout ability. The one-hitter quitter knockout power goes to Johnny Parsons. The more technical, cerebral, well-rounded fighter, that goes to Danny Roberts. And in this case, I'm going to go with the UFC experience, the veteran Danny Roberts, and the overall more technical fighter in Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts. So give me Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts to defeat Johnny Parsons via a 29-28 unanimous decision. I could see it being split because I do think Parsons will close off that range at a certain point. But for the majority, I think Roberts keeps it at where he wants, keeps him at the distance he wants to, and picks him apart for 15 minutes. So Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts to defeat Johnny Parsons via 29-28 unanimous decision. All right, and up next, we've got the fight that closes out the prelims in the UFC's bantamweight division between a Contender Series alum and undefeated professional mixed martial artist in Daniel Marcos, who comes into this fight with a record of 14 victories and no defeats, taking on a man in Davy Grant, Dangerous Davy Grant, former Ultimate Fighter alum, and a man who's on a 2-fight win streak, most recently with an inverted reverse triangle over Rafael Assunção in a fight where he was losing and was pretty much going to lose that decision. Rafael Assunção lost the position on the floor after Davy Grant grabbed the cage or something like that, lost the position, and then Grant landed a big spinning back fist on the feet. But before that, he was landing some big shots in that third round and coming out to win. And that's like what you're going to get in a guy like Davy Grant. He's going to come to win. He's going to come to fight. And he's going to come and he's going to get in your face. And he's going to try to knock you out. That's what Davy Grant is. He puts on the pressure. He puts on that forward movement. A lot of stance changes between orthodox and southpaw. He likes to switch stance with the hooks to the body and come back with the hook to the head on the other side. He'll land some kicks in combination with those punches and stance changes. He's a very well-rounded fighter. He's got good boxing, good knockout power. But when it comes to this fight, I think he's a little bit outmatched against Daniel Marcos. Now, UFC experience, it always goes to Dangerous Davy Grant. He's been in the UFC for a very long time, 15-6 as a pro, 14-0 for Daniel Marcos, but you can't always take the undefeated records and really make that play a precedence in your pick for a fight. I think Daniel Marcos is more technical. He likes to get on the pressure, and I think you got two pressure fighters here in Davy Grant and Marcos, and they're both going to kind of meet in the middle, but the more cerebral and measured fighter, I believe, even if it is kind of a in-your-face style of fight, is going to be Daniel Marcos. I feel like he measures distance a little bit better. He picks his shots better, changes stances on the correct angles, lands good low kicks, lands good body kicks. He's got really good body shots that you saw him crumble Simon Oliveira with in his UFC debut. On the Contender Series, he does get hit. That he is a guy that will get hit, but I think he's better defensively than Davy Grant. I think he's a little bit faster when it comes to the striking on the feet. When it comes to the grappling, I think this is mainly going to be a striking matchup. I don't see a ton of grappling, but I might give the advantage in the grappling to Davy Grant. But I think for the majority of this fight, it's going to take place on the feet. I think Daniel Marcos is going to get in the face of Davy Grant. I think there's going to be some close moments. I think Grant will land some good shots on Marcos, but I think Marcos is going to have more success throughout the fight. I think he's going to land more shots on Davy Grant. I think Davy Grant's going to get cut up, get bloodied. He's going to land some good elbows, some body kicks, front kicks. He's got a good front kick to the face as well. He kind of disguises it like it's going to go to the body, and he finds a way to land that front snap kick up top to your face. And I think that he could land that front kick against the pressure fighter in Davy Grant. Grant does have the opportunity to knock this guy out. I mean, 100%. I don't think a lot of people picked him to knock out Jonathan Martinez, and he did with that little switch stance to southpaw, right hook to the body, left hook up top to the head. Like I said, he likes to disguise those stance changes. He does that little switch step or scissor step and then cuts off on that angle with a little angle step. And, he is a good fighter. He is a veteran. And I think if anybody can pull this fight off, it's going to be dangerous Davy Grant. But for the most part, I think this is Daniel Marcos's fight, or it's going to be a fight that Daniel Marcos wins, because I just see him being not more active, but sharper in the strikes that he picks on the feet. He picks his shots a little bit better. I think he's better defensively with his footwork, his head movement, and even if he is in close, he does defend pretty well and doesn't get hit too much. Finds his angles to land those hooks, uppercuts, end the combination off by stepping off on an angle, landing good kicks, really good shots to the body, good knees to the body, and he kind of just drowns you the longer the fight goes. I don't think Davy Grant's a guy who's going to be able to get out-pressured and out-drowned, but at the same time, I think the fighter who's going to land the bigger shots, I think the more dangerous fighter and the more technical fighter in terms of at least the defensive aspect of the fight, along with, I believe, more technical offense as well, is going to be Daniel Marcos. And I really side with his defensive ability in this fight over Davy Grant, with being able to defend a lot of the shots that Grant throws at him and find his counter opportunities to cut up Davy Grant, to hurt Davy Grant. And I think the fight does go to a decision. I don't think it ends inside the distance, because Grant is a very durable fighter. I mean, he went 15 minutes in a very competitive fight with Marlon Chito Vera, who's one of the top contenders in that division. So I think if he can last with Marlon Chito Vera, I think he'll be able to go the distance with a guy like Marcos. But at the same time, I think, if Marcos can get Davy Grant out of there, it's a big feather in the cap of Daniel Marcos. But I am going to side with Daniel Marcos to win this fight via a 30-27 unanimous decision. I could see it being 29-28. Maybe Grant hurts him at one point in the round, lands the bigger shots and lands more volume. But like I said, I think the technical boxing, the mixing up between the punching and the kicking, the boxing and the kickboxing, the angles, the better defense, really solid low kicking, and the body work paired with the shots up top when he throws those multi-shot combinations and ends them with a kick, that goes to Daniel Marcos. So give me Daniel Marcos to improve to 15-0, remain undefeated, and defeat dangerous Davy Grant via 29-28 unanimous decision. All right, and now we move to the main card, and the main card opener in the UFC's, the featherweight division? Yes, in the UFC's featherweight division, between undefeated fighter and Lerone the Miracle Murphy, coming off of that razor-thin split decision win at UFC 286 against the UFC debutant in Gabriel Santos, who made a very good account of himself, going up against Josh Kulibau, who has a very, very impressive submission victory over Melsik the Gun Bagdasaryan, who we just saw compete in the last weekend's fights where he won via a unanimous decision. But Lerone Murphy and Josh Kulibau, this is interesting. And I think that Kulibau is going to be a guy who's counted out in almost every one of his fights. He's not the most technical. He's not the sharpest. He's not the most well-rounded. But the one thing about Kulibau is that he's going to come to fight. He's going to get in your face. He's going to be looking to land big combinations. He has really good low kicks to the inside and outside of his opponent's legs. He's got very good switch stance combinations. And he's kind of a herky-jerky fighter. That's kind of what I see Josh Kulabau as. He's a very herky-jerky fighter, a lot of fakes and feints, a lot of switch stances, a lot of mixing up his combos, and he throws his punches at awkward angles that eventually will catch people on the chin and drop them, like he did against Charles Jourdain, even though that fight did go to a draw. It was a split draw. I think 29-28 Jourdain, 29-28 Kulabau, and 28-28. I thought Kulabau did enough to win that fight, but it definitely, the third round, in my opinion, definitely went to Jourdain. He landed bigger shots. He was able to hurt Kulabau on the feet and catch him, and was able to use his grappling and his wrestling. The one thing we saw from Lerone Murphy, at least that we've seen in terms of chinks in his armor, is that he has issues with defending takedowns, and he has issues with working his way back up to the feet if he does get taken down. You saw it in the Gabriel Santos fight. You saw it in the Makwan Amirkhani fight before he was able to land that switch knee to the chin of Amirkhani in the beginning of the second round and knock him out cold. He got taken down. He got controlled. He got really dominated with the grappling from Makwan Amirkhani. Now, Kulabau isn't known as a grappler. He's known more as a striker. And I actually think Kulabau can have some advantages here against the more technical, sharper, by the book striker in the Miracle and Lerone Murphy. Lerone Murphy uses a lot of false stance changes. He uses a lot of stutter steps to close the distance, a lot of good 1-2s down the center, good left kicks to the body, good high kicks, good low kicks. He changes his stance. He'll move laterally, then cut back. He uses a lot of switch 45 where he'll briefly switch stances, then switch back to his original stance to open up the angle and square up the opponent's hips for the straight shots down the middle. He's a very cerebral fighter, is Murphy, and he has good takedown defense. He has his ability to work his way back up to the feet, even if he does get taken down. He showcased his submission defense against Gabriel Santos, who almost caught him in an armbar, but he stayed composed and was able to get out of it and then defend a triangle right before the round ended and, survive. I think the more technical fighter and the sharper fighter is definitely Lerone Murphy. But the one thing about Kulabau is that he's going to be coming forward, he's going to be getting in your face, and he's going to be looking to put you out. And even if you give him one sliver of an opportunity, Kulabau will jump on your back and lock up a rear naked choke like he did against Melsik Bagdasaryan. He'll find an opening to land an awkward overhand or a wide hook and drop you and knock you out. I think if Lerone Murphy's going to win this fight, he has to be focused for 15 minutes, because if Murphy drops his focus for even a fraction of a second, Kulabau can land a big shot. Kulabau can close the distance and find a way to win a scramble and get a submission. If Lerone Murphy is on top of Kulabau and, gives him an opportunity to lock up a submission, I think he can. But when it comes to overall striking, I think the power definitely goes to Kulabau. The finishing upside in terms of a knockout or a submission, that's going to go to Josh Kulabau as well. But in terms of the more well-rounded, cerebral, technical fighter, the better defensive fighter, that all goes to Lerone Murphy. And I think as long as he can keep this fight on the feet, keep it at his range, he can constantly use those angles, the triangle steps, stepping off and pivoting, landing good body kicks, front kicks, round kicks to the body, the straight left hand, the right hook, the 1-3-2, the 1-2-3, the hook into the body kick, the hook into the head kick. As long as he can use his jab and kind of be able to measure the distance, control the distance, and continue to circle around Josh Kulabau, I think he can pick him apart. And I think he could even get Kulabau out of there, because Kulabau is a guy who doesn't have the best defense. He kind of uses offense as his best defense, but he does get hit a lot. He has gotten hit and hurt, dropped and rocked in some of his fights before. And I think if Murphy can time a beautiful straight left into a right hook, a 1-2 down the middle, I think he can hurt Kulabau, potentially getting him out of there. But I don't necessarily see a finish from this fight unless it comes from the underdog in Joshua Kulabau, because I think Kulabau is so reckless. He's so defensively irresponsible. He kind of just throws himself into the fire. And I think he could catch the more technical, sharper fighter who wants to play a more point fighting style, technical, beautiful fight than a drag down, drag out, dog fight style of fight. If it's a dog fight, I think Josh Kulabau wins a dog fight with Lerone Murphy at least 8 out of 10 times. If it's a technical style of matchup, that's kind of a point fighting kickboxing match with some grappling and takedowns mixed in, and it's more of a point fighting style, then Lerone Murphy's going to win that fight every day. And I don't think anybody would discredit me. But the thing about Kulabau is he wins fights where he's down, he's out, looks like he's getting beat up. He finds a way to come back, land a big shot on his opponent, finds a way to come back, hurt his opponent, lock up a submission like he did against Melsik Bagdasaryan. And that's why Lerone Murphy has to be on point for the entirety of 15 minutes or until he gets a finish. Like if he takes his eye off the target, if he takes his foot off the gas for 1 second and kind of lulls himself into a false sense of security, that's where Kulabau can catch him with a big shot. That's where Kulabau can out scramble him or get a takedown or find a way to take his back and submit him. I think Kulabau has the advantage in the power. He has the advantage with the grappling. He has the advantage with the submissions. But I think Lerone Murphy has the advantage at distance. He's the more technical fighter. He's much better defensively. He's better with his footwork and his angles. And I think, like I said, the more well-rounded fighter is Lerone Murphy. And Lerone Murphy should win this fight. But it is a dangerous fight and a close one, and one where I wouldn't necessarily recommend betting on it too heavy from either side, because I think the more likely aspect and the likely outcome is that Murphy just picks him apart, constantly cuts his angles, catches Josh Kulabau on the counters, potentially TKOs him and knocks him out, or just wins a decision by kind of point fighting and cruising his way to a decision, but avoiding the big dangerous moments for Kulabau. Or that's exactly what is happening, and then Kulabau finds a big shot that drops Murphy. He gets into a scramble and eventually takes his back and chokes him out. My pick for the fight is going to be Lerone Murphy. I'm going to go with the miracle to remain undefeated, go to 13-0-1 against the 11-1-1 Josh Kulabau. I am going to go with Lerone Murphy to win via a 29. You know what? I'll go with a late TKO because Kulabau doesn't have the best defense. I'll go with Murphy by a late second round TKO, catching him with a head kick, catching him with a knee, or catching him with a big straight left, dropping him and hurting him. But again, it's not a fight that I'm extremely eager to bet on because Kulabau is dangerous. Kulabau does have, he's from Australia, but he kind of has that Samoan style of fighting where he's going to get in your face. He's going to get in the pocket and swing with you and try to take you out. He's going to look for opportunities to lock up subs. Kulabau's going to look for any opportunity to win this fight, and that is always a dangerous fighter to be going up against. Even though I think Murphy's the much better fighter, Kulabau is very dangerous and you have to be careful. So I don't love the betting perspective, but if I was going to tell you to bet, I would take the favorite in Lerone Murphy because I think he's going to be able to outstrike Kulabau and exploit his defensive inefficiencies and be able to catch Kulabau on the chin, drop him, and get him out of there in the second round. So give me Lerone the Miracle Murphy to defeat Joshua Kulabau via late second round TKO. But when you look at the odds for the fight, Lerone Murphy minus 140, Josh Kulabau plus 120. I like the minus 140 price tag for Murphy, but again, this isn't a fight that I'm yelling at you to go bet. I think there's better opportunities to target, and I bet Lerone Murphy against Gabriel Santos in the last one, and we got by the literal skin of our teeth, so this isn't a fight that I'm necessarily eager to bet Lerone Murphy, and it's not a spot where I'm eagerly anticipating betting Lerone Murphy again. But the pick is going to be Lerone Murphy via late second round TKO, catching Josh Kulabau with that big straight left, a big hook, maybe some knees inside the clinch, and getting him out of there. All right, up next on the main card, you have a battle in the UFC's lightweight division between Team Renegades' Jai Herbert going up against Fares Ziam. Fares Ziam, 13 victories and 4 defeats. Jai Herbert, 12 victories, 4 defeats, and 1 draw. This is a very, very close fight. In my opinion, this is a 50-50 matchup. I think either fighter can win, and it's a very difficult fight to break down. Jai Herbert is mainly a striker. He can use his wrestling. He can use his grappling. I think we've seen him use his wrestling and grappling a little bit more later in his career than we had seen earlier. When you look at Fares Ziam, he's a very technical and cerebral kickboxer, uses a lot of fakes and feints, kind of lifts that lead leg up, a lot of lead hand feints, a lot of rear hand measures. He picks his spots, and he kind of just picks apart his opponents and lands the sharper, cleaner kickboxing combinations throughout the 15 minutes. But we've also seen Fares Ziam have some grappling as well, but he did get submitted by Terrence McKinney, I believe, via a rear naked choke. I don't think we're going to see a ton of grappling in this fight. I think we will see 50-50 position battles up against the cage, but I do think Jai Herbert wins those clinch positions. I think he might be able to but out-position Fares Ziam in the clinch, but it is going to be a very difficult fight for him. It's a very difficult fight for either guy. This is the fight that I would say do not bet 100%. Like, I wouldn't bet Jai Herbert. I wouldn't bet Fares Ziam. I wouldn't bet fight to go the distance. I wouldn't bet fight to not go to decision. Like, I don't really like any betting perspective or any angle of betting when you look at this fight because I really think it is 50-50. I think that the better footwork and better angles comes from Jai Herbert. I think the faster combinations could possibly come from Jai Herbert. But at the same time, I think Fares CM does have probably a little bit more power. I think he's a little bit more patient to where he might be able to find openings on Jai Herbert, who does historically get hit a lot. Like, he does get hit. He leaves himself open. He's been knocked out. He's been hurt. We've seen the durability tested, and it has failed. But also with this fight against Ilia Topuria, who just dominated Josh Emmett, he landed a beautiful right hand into a switch lead left high kick that dropped Ilia Topuria. It hurt him. He jumped on him. He rocked him again. But eventually, Ilia Topuria was able to go overhand right, left shot to the body, and then another overhand that knocked Jai Herbert out cold in one of the most brutal knockouts we've seen in the UFC. So I don't like Jai Herbert in terms of his durability, but I do like Jai Herbert in terms of his ability to use his fakes and feints, but more importantly, his ability to get on his bike and use his footwork, in and out movement, lateral movement, triangle steps, pivoting off. I feel like he uses more footwork than Fares CM, while Fares CM is kind of a pick you apart style of kickboxer, but is also a very good counter fighter. So if he's there for the counters, I think Jai Herbert can get hurt. But I think the footwork and movement paired with his combinations and the speed could give Fares CM a lot of trouble because, it might be too much for him and he might not be able to track down a guy like Jai Herbert and find the openings for his big shots. When it comes to a pick, though, I am going to side ever so slightly, and I mean ever so slightly, with Jai Herbert. He's going to be fighting in London, England. He's from England. He's going to be in his hometown. I think he's going to come in here, fight the fight that he needs to fight. I think he's going to get more motivation from being in his hometown, and I think Jai Herbert just ever so slightly edges a unanimous decision, and I think he does so by using his grappling, his wrestling, or controlling Fares CM up against the cage in the 50-50, looking for trip takedowns and using that in the late half of the second round and into the third to secure the rounds in a fight that's going to be very, very technical and very close on the feet, pretty much 50-50. But I think if Herbert uses his wrestling and grappling, it could go from 50-50 to like 65-35 or 60-40 in terms of a winning percentage. So I am going to side with the Black Country Banger in Jai Herbert to defeat Fares CM via 29-28 split decision. But it's a very close fight. Like I said, it is 50-50, and that's why I do think it'll be a split. But I could easily see Fares CM catching Jai Herbert with a big counter and knocking him out, or being able to outstrike him and catch him on counters as he closes the distance throughout the 15-minute fight. So very close, but I am going to ever so slightly side with Jai Herbert, the Black Country Banger, to defeat Fares CM by 29-28 split decision. All right, and now we'll continue on the main card. Up next in the middleweight division, you have another fighter who this time is dropping in weight. Earlier, we had Brian Barberena going from welterweight to middleweight. Now we have a fighter who was a former light heavyweight dropping down to the middleweight division, and the number 9 ranked light heavyweight and submission ace, Paul Craig. Paul Craig going up against another phenomenal grappler, a multiple-time jiu-jitsu world champion, and a pretty solid striker on the feet as well in Andre Muniz. So Andre Muniz and Paul Craig, first off, hats off to the matchmakers for making this fight, because this is a very intriguing matchup, and honestly, once the fight hits the mat, I could see either fighter catching the other in a submission. But similar to what we talked about earlier with one of the fights, I believe it was, which one was it that we talked about? Hold on. Jafel Filo and Daniel Barez. Like, it's going to be mainly a striking matchup because they're two pretty solid decorated grapplers. So for the most part, it's probably going to play out on the feet. I kind of see this being a similar situation to where we're expecting a lot of grappling from both of these men. And although I would say that the more well-rounded, like pace-for-pace grappler is Andre Muniz, the better positional grappler, the better top control artist, the better submission artist is Andre Muniz, I could easily see Paul Craig just catching Andre Muniz's neck, just catching his arm, rolling for a leg lock, turning from the bottom into, windmilling or penduluming into a armbar, transitioning to a triangle. Anytime you're on the ground with Paul Craig, you're in danger. I don't care how dangerous of a grappler you are. I don't care how many submission wins you have. I don't care how dangerous your grappling game is or how many world championships you have. If you're on the floor or on the mat with Paul Craig, you're 100% in danger in the grappling. However, like we said, I think it's going to be more of the grappling from each of these fighters canceling each other out, a lot of scrambles, a lot of, position for position. And when I see this fight, I think Andre Muniz is the better striker. I think he has better ability to use that southpaw stance, land the left body kick, land the straight left hand, land the jab right hook, the straight left. If you go back and watch the fight with Brendan Allen, before Brendan Allen was able to take the back and submit Andre Muniz, which was unbelievable. I don't think anybody expected Brendan Allen to win that fight via submission. If anything, they thought he was going to be able to outstrike Andre Muniz or potentially just strike his way to a decision and defend the takedowns. But he did get submitted. But at the same time, Andre Muniz's grappling was Andre Muniz's striking was very well rounded in that fight, landing the straight left, landing the right hooks, landing the combinations, beautiful kicks to the body, beautiful high kicks, and he looked like a pretty seasoned striker going up against a pretty dangerous striker in his own right, even though many people didn't believe that to be probably about a year ago in Brendan Allen. But now Allen's coming off a fight where he basically knocked out and then submitted Bruno Silva, and a man who went life and death with the former middleweight champion in Alex Pereira. So you have to give him credit, where credit is due. But at the same time, he got submitted by Allen, who is a jiu-jitsu artist in his own right. So what's to say that Paul Craig, who's much more dangerous on the mat than Brendan Allen, in my opinion, won't be able to find a way to lock up a submission on Muniz if he potentially shoots a bad takedown or gets caught in a scramble. I think that he could lock up a leg for a leg lock. I think he could lock up his arm in an arm bar. I mean, he's submitted the former light heavyweight champion in Jamal Hill, who was able to survive on the ground with Glover Teixeira, at least for the points where the fight played out on the ground. He submitted who many people believe to be the true light heavyweight champion at this point, since Yuri Prohaska hasn't come back yet, and Magomed Ankalaev. He submits everybody, but if he can't get those submissions, he more than likely is going to lose the fight. And I think that's what we see here. Is Paul Craig live to be able to submit Andre Muniz and catch him in something? Yes, he's definitely live. And would I say that it's a bad choice to bet Paul Craig by submission? No, not at all. I don't think that that's a bad choice if you're looking at this fight from a betting perspective. But when I see it, I don't think he's going to be able to submit a multiple-time Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion in Andre Muniz. I don't necessarily think he will be able to get to the positions where he'll have the submission opportunities available to him. And I think for the most part, Muniz is going to be using his grappling in a defensive manner to be able to avoid any scrambles or potential submission attempts from Paul Craig. And at that point, you're going to get a striking matchup. And you're going to get two grapplers standing up and striking with each other. But from what I've seen from each of these fighters, the better striker overall, the more technical striker, the better punches, the better boxing, the better kickboxing, the better shots to the body. It's all Andre Muniz. It's just Andre Muniz can't get tired, because if he gets tired, then he's going to give Paul Craig the opportunity to lock up a sub on him. I think that this fight is very difficult to bet on, but I think the winner, in my opinion, is going to be Andre Muniz. I'm going to go with the number 14 ranked middleweight in Muniz. I know he's coming off of a pretty bad look against Brendan Allen and getting submitted by a guy who shouldn't have been able to submit him, and now he's going up against a really dangerous light heavyweight submission artist who's gonna have a strength advantage going down to the middleweight division. That is something you have to take into consideration. He's gonna be going down, so he's gonna have the strength, the size advantage. Brendan Allen is a big middleweight. Will Paul Craig be able to out-scramble? Will he be able to out-position Muniz, tire him out, and get a sub? If he tires out Andre Muniz, I think Paul Craig is 100% live for a submission finish in this fight. But I think that the grappling mainly cancels out, and I think if Muniz's cardio is on point, then he should be able to stifle the submission attempts, potentially submitting Paul Craig, because Craig did get submitted by Jimmy Crute in the third round back in the day. So, Craig can get submitted as well, just like Muniz got submitted by Brendan Allen. But I think the overall more well-rounded technical grappler, the overall more well-rounded striker, the sharper fighter on the feet is going to be Andre Muniz. And I have to go with him here. I think he's going to win a decision. I could see the fight getting finished inside the distance, because both men are finishers. Both men look for submissions. Both men look to ground their opponent and submit them. But if it is a striking matchup, I could see Craig getting cracked on the chin. But if it is a finish, I would more than likely say Paul Craig catches Andre Muniz in an exchange on the ground and is able to lock up an armbar or a triangle submission. The triangle being his best sub. He broke Jamal Hill's arm in an armbar and then triangled him and elbowed him into oblivion. Andre Muniz at the same time, though, I think he's going to be able to keep it on the feet. I think he defends from the submission attempts, potentially out positions Craig on the floor. And even though Muniz can get a submission, I'm going to go with Andre Muniz to win this fight via decision. I think it could play out pretty similar to the fight with Volkan Oezdemir and Paul Craig, where he just avoided the submissions and outstruck him on the feet. I think that's what we're going to see here, but Andre Muniz might be a little bit more willing to grapple with Paul Craig, because I do believe he is the pound for pound better positional and more aware technical grappler, even though I would say the more dangerous submission artist. Like overall, it might give it to Paul Craig. The better finisher, I would say, probably goes to Paul Craig. But overall, I'm going to pick the number 14 ranked middleweight in Andre Muniz to spoil the middleweight debut of Paul Craig. I'm going to go with Andre Muniz to defeat Paul Craig via 29-28 unanimous decision. I could see him catching him on the feet with something, rocking him and subbing him, but I think it goes the distance. I think it's pretty similar to the Volkan Oezdemir and Paul Craig fight. So give me Andre Muniz to defeat Paul Craig via 29-28 unanimous decision. When it comes to a betting side, I do like the side of Muniz, but based on the fact that Paul Craig is so dangerous and, you know, he comes from behind in all of his victories, like he's almost losing the fight and he finds a way to get a sub, I think this fight is one that you might want to just stay away from in terms of the betting perspective, but the pick is going to be Andre Muniz by decision. Up next, we're going to the featherweight division in a fight that I am extremely excited to talk about. It's a battle between Nathaniel Wood, former UFC bantamweight, who's gone 2-0 in the featherweight division with very impressive wins over Charles Rosa and Charles Jourdain, and he's going up against Andre Touchy-Fili, a very solid veteran in the UFC. Even though he's fallen on hard times in terms of his overall mixed martial arts record, he looks really good in some fights that we think he's going to be looking not too great in. But most of the time he just drops the ball. And then when you think he's going to lose, he finds a way to come back and win. And that's Andre Touchy-Fili. So Andre Touchy-Fili versus Nathaniel Wood. I think that Nathaniel Wood, first of all, let me say, I think this is a close fight. And if you're just going in blindly betting Nathaniel Wood, thinking he's going to run through Andre Fili, at this point in his career, like I wouldn't blame you because of what we've seen from Fili lately and how good Nathaniel Wood has looked at 145 pounds. But at the same time, I think that Nathaniel Wood, this is his toughest fight to date. And I don't necessarily think that this is Andre Touchy-Fili's toughest fight in terms of overall competition level, because Fili's fought some of the killers in the featherweight division. I think that Fili has an advantage with the kicking speed in this fight. The head kicks, the body kicks, the switch kicks to the body. I think the best weapons for Andre Fili to win this fight is to defend the takedowns, keep it at kicking range, use multi-shot boxing combinations, 2, 3, 4 punch combos, and punctuate the combinations with a kick. Go with head kicks, go with body kicks. He's got such heavy power in his kicks to the body and his head kicks. I think if he keeps this fight at a kicking range and can avoid the low kicks and calf kicks and the boxing of Nathaniel Wood, then I think Andre Fili can have a lot of success in this fight. I think this is a fight where I have a side pretty clearly that I'm looking to bet, but I feel like a lot of these fights on this fight night card, like they should go one way, but it very easily could go the other way if the other fighter just makes small adjustments. And I think that's similar to what we're seeing here with Fili and Nathaniel Wood. I think if he can avoid the grappling, avoid the wrestling, I think that he can outstrike Nathaniel Wood as long as he stays at the kicking range. The problem is the minute this fight gets into boxing range, it's all Nathaniel Wood. The boxing, the pull counters, the cover counters, the beautiful left hook, you know, the counter striking, the counter boxing, the calf kicks. If Nathaniel Wood gets into a rhythm, I think he pieces up Andre Fili on the feet. But if Andre Fili is able to keep that jab in his face and avoid getting into boxing range and use those body kicks, use those head kicks, use those switch kicks, and then maybe mix in some grappling and takedowns as more of a defensive mechanism where the opponent, like in Nathaniel Wood, comes forward and he uses counter wrestling, I think Fili can have a lot of success against Wood. I think this is a very close fight. Like I said, I think this is the toughest fight of Nathaniel Wood's UFC career. I think this is the toughest fight that the prospect has had. But also, if you look at the litmus test for Nathaniel Wood, or, you know, if you go back and look at the tape, at 145, he dominated Charles Rosa before getting caught in that submission, but was able to survive it and then beat the brakes off of him. And then the same thing kind of happened in the Charles Jourdain fight, even though I feel like Jourdain had a little bit more success at pushing forward and pressuring Nathaniel Wood. Andre Fili fought Charles Jourdain as well, and I believe he won via unanimous decision. Let me see. Andre. versus Charles Jourdain. I believe it was a decision win. Yeah, he won via decision back in June of 2020 at UFC on ESPN versus Calvillo. But again, like the Charles Jourdain win, Nathaniel Wood looked very good in that fight, but Charles Jourdain isn't the best person to have a win over. He's great. He's got very powerful kicks, very powerful striking, but he just never has been a fighter who could totally put it all together. So I think you do have to take that into consideration when breaking down Fili versus Wood, because Charles Jourdain never really put it together in his UFC career. He'd get a win, then lose one, then get a win, then lose one, and then he'd lose another one. And it was kind of just very hot and cold from the side of Charles Jourdain, where Andre Fili hasn't had much success in the UFC, 22-9 with one no contest. He's coming off that decision win, I believe, over, what's it called? Hold on. Andre Fili. Over Bill Elgio in a very close fight. They went back and forth, but Fili's kicking game and some of his wrestling gave him a lot of success, or aided him in having a lot of success. But it was the head kicks of Andre Fili that really, I think, is what swayed the judges. So Andre Fili, his last fight was in September of 2022. That's where he got that split decision victory over over Bill Elgio. Prior to that, he lost via knockout 41 seconds into round 1 to Joe Anderson Brito. Before that, it was the no contest to Daniel Pineda in 2021, but he looked great in that fight, looked absolutely phenomenal. Lost the decision to Bryce Mitchell, got out wrestled, got out grappled, got controlled, beat Charles Jourdain via decision, so we were right in that regard. And then Sadiq Youssef, he lost the decision to Sadiq Youssef. Before that, he got a knockout victory in the first round over Shaman Moraes, one of the best performances from Andre Fili in his entire career, including that Daniel Pineda fight where he was beating the brakes off Pineda before that eye poke and eventually leading to a no contest. But Fili was on his way to finishing Daniel Pineda in that fight. Before that, a decision victory over Miles Jury. Lost the decision to Michael Johnson. Then he beat Dennis Bermudez via decision. Beat Artem Lobov via decision, lost to Kelvin Cater via decision in Kelvin Cater's debut. Was supposed to fight Doo Ho Choi. I mean, just going through the resume, the more tested UFC veteran, the hotly tested contender in this fight is Andre Fili. The fighter who's had more fights in his career is Andre Fili. But I also feel like, or at least more UFC caliber fights, tougher competition. But at the same time, I feel like this is a fight where Fili's got a lot of damage. Fili's been hurt multiple times in his career before. We just saw him get knocked out by Joe Anderson Brito in 41 seconds, but we know Brito has the power to knock out and hurt a lot of people in that division, so you got to think about that as well. But I do think that the calf kicks and the low kicking game, paired with the footwork and the boxing combinations, anytime this is in the pocket, I think Andre Fili gets lit up by Nathaniel Wood. I think it's really a low kicking game, sticking Fili behind the jab, low kicking, and then when he tries to come forward with combinations, closing off that distance, landing boxing combinations, pull counters, 2-3s, uppercuts into hooks, 1-1-2s, and just kind of piecing up Andre Fili at the boxing range. I think we could see Fili resort to his wrestling and his grappling chops in this fight because we've seen him have very good offensive wrestling, but I think the jiu-jitsu game of Nathaniel Wood and his defensive wrestling, I think it's going to be very hard for him to be able to get much success off on the mat or even getting the fight to the mat. So I think if Fili keeps it at kicking range, I think he wins the fight. But I think it's going to be a case of those calf kicks slowing down Fili's ability to stay at range and allowing Nathaniel Wood to close off the range and distance and kind of piecing up Andre Fili in that boxing range. And I think he's going to get a finish with his hands. So I'm going to go with Nathaniel Wood. I'm going to go with the prospect Nathaniel Wood to defeat Andre Touchy Fili, going 3-0 in the 145-pound featherweight division in the UFC via a second-round TKO. I think he's just going to get in that boxing range and piece up Andre Fili and eventually get that TKO victory. So give me the prospect Nathaniel Wood to defeat Andre Touchy Fili via second-round TKO. All right, and now we're at the co-main event of the evening in the UFC women's flyweight division between hometown hero in the meatball, Molly McCann, taking on the armbar or bust jiu-jitsu specialist in Lithuania's Julia Stoliarenko. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this fight. I don't think a lot of people will. If Julia Stoliarenko gets Molly McCann down to the floor, she's going to submit her. So it's going to be a case of, can Julia Stoliarenko get in on Molly McCann, close the distance, take her down, and submit her? Because the only time we've ever seen Molly McCann really get beat up or get dominated is in the grappling. But I don't see Julia Stoliarenko having the same level of grappling or submission chops as the likes of Erin Blanchfield, who made her look like a little baby on the floor. But a lot of the times, if McCann has trouble, it's because she gets taken down, she gets top controlled, or she gets controlled from the top and eventually gets submitted or just controlled and grounded and pounded. This is kind of a fighter who can do that same similar style of game plan against a girl like Molly McCann. She can take her down. She can get in the top position. She can fall off for an armbar. She can get taken down by Molly McCann and swing her hips over to the one side to get the armbar. And it's a problem, man. I know Stoliarenko, her record is 10-7-2 or 10-8-2. But, and Molly McCann has the better record at 13-5. If this fight stays on the feet, Molly McCann's going to knock out Stoliarenko. So it's a case of, do you think she stops the takedowns? Do you think she stops the submission attempts and keeps it on the feet so McCann can land her much, much, much better boxing, much better striking, and much better power to be able to knock out Stoliarenko, who we've seen isn't very durable at all. And if she can't get the takedowns and go for a submission, she's pretty much 100% going to lose the fight. But at the same time, if you look at a girl like Molly McCann, she's the type of fighter who, if she can't keep it on the feet, if she gets taken down, if the fighter who's on top of her is able to control her and has much better submission and jiu-jitsu sides, then they're going to win. So it's basically, does McCann keep it on the feet and beat up Stoliarenko and probably knock her out? Or does Stoliarenko find a way to get in on the hips of Molly McCann, take her down, and be able to submit Molly McCann? Because that's pretty much how the fight's going to play out, and there's not much more to it than that. Better record, Molly McCann. Better striker, better power, better knockout upside, better finishing upside on the feet, Molly McCann. Better takedowns, better top control, better submission attempts, better arm bars. I mean, she's known as like the armbar queen or something like that. That's Stoliarenko all day. So what do you think's going to happen? I'm going to be honest. This is kind of a coin flip. I think that Molly McCann could just stay away from her and box her up and get her out of there in round one. But at the same time, if Stoliarenko gets in on the hips, is able to trip up Molly McCann and fall into the top position and go for a submission, if she gets knocked down and McCann follows her to the floor because she hurts her and she gets caught in an armbar, then at the same time, I could also see Stoliarenko, finding a way to submit Molly McCann. I'm actually going to, I don't know, man. Like I said, this is kind of a coin flip. I don't know who I favor too much in this fight, but Let me think about this for a second. McCann, she got submitted so fast against Erin Blanchfield, though. I'm going to go with Stoliarenko. I'm going to go with the underdog. I think she finds a way to get her to the floor and takes her arm and submits her. I know she's submission or bust. I know McCann probably knocks her out on the feet. I could definitely see that happening. But I'm going to go with Julia Stoliarenko to be able to find a way to grab that arm from Molly McCann and submit her. It's not that McCann's going to quit on herself. It's not that she's going to tap and give up really quick. But I think she might break the arm of Molly McCann. Like, that might be how this goes. She gets in, finds a submission, breaks her arm, and the fight's over. So give me Julia Stoliarenko to defeat Meatball Molly McCann in her hometown of London, England. Or not her hometown, but in her home turf of London at the O2 Arena via first round armbar. She's a big underdog. I wouldn't recommend betting on this fight at all. I think you probably bet fight doesn't go the distance, because I don't think this fight goes to decision either way. I don't know what the odds are on the fight to not go to the distance. I think I could pull it up here. The under 2.5 rounds is minus 145. I think that's your best play for the fight. I really do. Stoliarenko's plus 185 is the underdog. I think if you're really going to play that, you just take Stoliarenko by submission. If you're going to play McCann, you take Molly McCann by knockout. But I think the under 2.5 is the best play if you don't know what side you want to be on. I could definitely see Molly McCann stuffing the takedown, stuffing the arm bars, and knocking out Stoliarenko. But I just think she finds a way to grab that arm in round one, and in a scramble, in a takedown, in a loss of position, she locks up that armbar and breaks the arm of Molly McCann and wins via first round armbar submission. All right, now we move to the main event of the evening with the return of England's best chance at a heavyweight champion, England's best chance at having another champion in the UFC, aside from the welterweight champion in Leon Edwards. You have Tom Aspinall coming back after that TKO loss due to injury to Curtis Razor Blades in a UFC Fight Night main event. He comes in with a record of 12 victories and 3 defeats, going up against the number 10 ranked fighter in the division. Aspinall's ranked number 5, Marcin Tybura, who comes back with a record of 24 victories and 7 defeats. Tybura versus Aspinall. Listen, this is a fight you don't bet on. I'm going to be honest. Even though I haven't gotten to my pick yet, I don't think you bet on this fight. I think there is like one area where maybe you could take a shot on a bet. But to be honest, I think you just stay away from this main event. But I don't really see any area where Marcin Tybura has an advantage over Tom Aspinall. He's not the better technical striker. He doesn't have the better submissions. He doesn't have the faster hands. He's not faster. He's not more technical. I think Tom Aspinall has the better grappling. I think Tybura could maybe slow down Aspinall as it gets into the later rounds because he does have good cardio and he can push a high pace for a heavyweight with a lot of good volume. But at the same time, I think that this is a fight where Aspinall is just going to be better everywhere. Faster on the feet, better striking, better distance management, better ability to close the pocket, crash the pocket, and land his 1-2s, land his straight punch right down the middle, land those front kicks, land those low kicks. I mean, you saw against Volkov, he was able to land like a 1-2, pull, slip the punch of Volkov, and then shoot the takedown, and he locked up that straight arm lock, or the version of the Americana early in the fight. I think that he can submit Marcin Tybura. I think Tybura, if he's going to win, he has to slow down Aspinall, work the low kicks because he is coming in off a knee injury. You're going to want to attack the legs, work the low kicks, probably look to win via injury. Like attack that leg, attack it hard, attack it fast, go for knee bars, go for leg locks. I know it's kind of scummy to do that to somebody who's coming off a knee injury, but this is MMA. This is the highest level. If you know somebody, your opponent is coming in with an injury after they spent so much time away rehabbing and getting back in shape, you attack that injury like a dog on the bone. Leg kicks, front kicks to the knee, elliptical kicks, shooting takedowns, single legs, crackdown series of takedowns where you snap down on that knee, go for leg locks, inside and outside low kicks, side kicks, elliptical kicks, front kicks to the knee. That's how Tybura is going to win this fight. Staying at range, landing more shots, and hopefully just beating up that leg and not allowing Aspinall to be as quick or as powerful. But at the same time, I think Tom Aspinall shines in this fight. I think they set up this fight against Tybura to make Tom Aspinall look very good, to let him get an early finish, let him get a dominant win, and then work his way back to the top of the heavyweight division, probably getting one more fight before he gets a title shot. I think Aspinall versus Gane is what they're looking to do, to be honest. So I think they want him to get this win over Marcin Tybura and then have him fight Ciryl Gane. Gane's coming off that first round submission loss to John Jones. So, I don't think anybody expected John Jones to submit him in the first round. We knew that John Jones was going to have a grappling advantage, a wrestling advantage, a submission advantage, but I don't think anybody expected the fight to end that quick. And now John Jones is going to be defending his heavyweight championship against Stipe Miocic at Madison Square Garden in November. But I think what they're looking to do is have Aspinall come in against Tybura, get a quick win, then go off and fight Ciryl Gane, probably on the November card. I think they could look to do it in November. I mean, it's July, August, September, October, November. If it's a quick win and Aspinall comes out unscathed, Ciryl Gane's ready to go. I think they probably do Tom Aspinall versus Ciryl Gane. But the sneaky play for this fight, in my opinion, is Tom Aspinall by submission. I think he could definitely knock out Tybura on the feet, but I think he hurts him on the feet, drops him, gets into a grappling exchange, takes his back and takes his neck. So I'm going to go with Tom Aspinall, the number 5 ranked UFC heavyweight, to come back after that injury and come back with a dominant win. I'm going to go with a second round rear naked choke submission over the number 10 ranked Marcin Tybura for Tom Aspinall. I don't know if the odds are out yet for Tybura, or I'm sorry, for the winning methods for the main event. Let me see. No, not yet. But I would say that Tom Aspinall by submission is probably your best target for playing this fight. I called Myra Bueno Silva by sub over Holly Holm. I think Tom Aspinall by sub. I think he hurts him on the feet. They get into a grappling exchange. He finds his way to the back and locks up the rear naked choke. I mean, he's got submissions over Volkov. He's got a submission over Arlovsky. I definitely think that the area and the path to victory is there, especially against a guy who's probably going to look to push Aspinall up against the cage and look to wrestle and grapple. I think the submission is right there. So give me the number 5 ranked Tom Aspinall to defeat the number 10 ranked Marcin Tybura via a second round rear naked choke submission. But at the same time, I'm not too eager to bet it because Aspinall's coming in back off an injury. You don't know how he's going to look. You don't know how healed up that knee is. And if Tybura starts attacking with low kicks, goes for leg locks, basically the game plan I laid out earlier in this breakdown, I think that maybe we could have some underdog city on Marcin Tybura, but I'm pretty sure that's not what's going to happen. I think Aspinall comes in, laying some good strikes on the feet, gets a takedown, gets into the top position, finds a way to get the back, and submits Marcin Tybura in round 2. So give me Tom Aspinall, the number 5 ranked heavyweight, to defeat the number 10 ranked Marcin Tybura via second round rear naked choke submission. All right, that's it for my UFC London Aspinall versus Tybura preview, predictions, and breakdown. The fights take place from the O2 Arena this Saturday, July 22nd, at an early start time of 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. Great overall card. Like, it's not the best card, but I think it's a really good card from a betting perspective. If I was going to give you my favorite bets for the card, I don't usually do this, but I will give you my best plays for the card. We'll go through it. I think that the best plays to target for this card are Mahmoud Muradov inside the distance. Or you know what? I'm not even going to include him because he shit the bed against Gerald Mearshart. So we'll say I like Joel Alvarez. He's, I think, only like a minus 150, minus 160 against Mark Jacasey. Let me see. Yeah, minus 190 now. So I like Joel Alvarez, minus 190. He's probably my most confident play. I then would say Daniel Marcos is a good play in the bantamweight division. He is sitting currently at a minus 140. So minus 190, minus 140. And then if we continue up the card, I think Nathaniel Wood would probably be my next best play, and he's currently sitting at a minus 195. So the odds are definitely coming in on the favor of the picks, but my favorite picks overall for the card from a betting perspective would be Joel Alvarez over Mark Jacasey, Daniel Marcos over Davey Grant, and Nathaniel Wood over Andre Touchy-Feely. And then for a flyer play, for a play that I think isn't like 100% concrete because I don't want to play the main event, but I'll give it to you anyway, it would be Tom Aspinall via submission over his opponent in Marcin Tybura. So Aspinall by sub. I also like the shot on Daniel Borez. So let me give you a list. I'll give you a list of my top 5 plays for the card. Joel Alvarez over Mark Jacasey. Nathaniel Wood. No, hold on. Let's start over because I want to go in order. So give me Chris Duncan over Yanal Ashmos. Give me Joel Alvarez over Mark Jacasey as my most confident play. Give me Daniel Marcos over Davey Grant. Give me Tom Aspinall by submission. And then give me Nathaniel Wood over Andre Touchy-Feely. Those are my favorite plays for the card. This is it. That's it for my UFC London breakdown, my UFC Fight Night Aspinall versus Tybura breakdown. This podcast is going to be available on YouTube with fully edited video clips and everything like that. And you can also get this podcast anywhere you get your audio podcasts. That includes Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, Breaker, Stitcher, and many, many more. Support my Patreon. We don't have any supporters yet. I've only had it up and running for about 2 or 3 weeks, but I'm going to have betting breakdown articles. I'm going to have fighter breakdowns that we have on YouTube, post-fight breakdowns, pre-fight tape study, and everything like that. So be sure to check out the Patreon. That's the same name as the podcast, at the Touch 'Em Up Podcast. I'm your host, Double M, and let's make some money at UFC London.